those simple
Yep.
ones.
John, so glad you got on. Thanks for joining us that you're teaching tonight. And oh my goodness, so glad to have you all here. I would love to ask if anybody has an oil story or a MetaPower minute, I like to call it. Any example of what they've got going on in their lives?
I have one.
Okay.
Just happened this morning, actually. So we had thunderstorms, really, really loud, booming thunderstorms start at about 1:30 in the morning this morning. And my dog was going nuts. She was clawing at the gate on the stairs and whining. And it was so sad. So I did rock, paper, scissors and lost to Dale. So I went downstairs and sat on the couch, and I had my frankincense roller with me, the frankincense touch, and I rolled it on my pajama leg, not even on the dog. I rolled it on my pajama leg, and she laid down and put her nose next to me and just stopped shaking. I mean, 2 minutes in, and she had stopped shaking and was chilled, and I fell asleep down there, but that's not the point. The point is that y'all are, if you have dogs that have like thunder shirts or need to be crated when they're anxious, separation anxiety, I'm just saying, just put frankincense touch on something
your pajamas.
near them. Right. It doesn't even, you don't even put it on your dog. They just need to smell it. It's amazing what frankincense does for my dog.
I love that. And I love when people say it's just a placebo effect. And I'm like, yeah, then it wouldn't work on the dogs if it was a placebo effect. So, oh, that is an awesome story. Anybody else have a MetaPower minute or an oil story they want to share?
I have one.
Go, Sarah.
So day after Halloween, a 5-year-old goes trick-or-treating and trunk-or-treating. We have like a huge tub of candy just from that. Today, literally one Starburst, and I haven't craved like any of the sugar or any of the candy or going rating his candy at all since Saturday that it's been here. And the only you knew
You knew you got that
I
started.
knew you had that. But normal Halloween, I would have probably eaten like half his load by now.
Yeah. It's too interesting to me that they've created an oil that will keep our cravings away. I don't know how that is, but it is truly phenomenal. Truly phenomenal. Yeah, I didn't crave getting the candy to put out by the door. I just, yeah, it's amazing to me. Anybody else have that kind of reaction on MetaPower?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, Kathy.
Are y'all taking the, let me see, the metabolic blend soft gels after you eat your meal? Or when you start craving things?
I just do it with my vitamins in the morning and with my vitamins at noon. And then I usually take my assist with my dinner meal. So I'm trying to get, I drink the oil in my water, I take the soft gel, but there's no right or wrong. There's really no right or wrong. You can do it whenever it's good for you. I just want it in my system to keep the cravings away.
And you're doing the powder too?
The powder is the advantage, which is the collagen powder. I'm starting to credit everything in my life. I don't know. It's like, how can my mind be so clear? How can I have so much energy? How can my daughter was here, guys, you guys don't know that I am somebody that when somebody shares upsetting stuff or has an upsetting time, I just carry it on my shoulders. I just like ache to fix them, ache to help. It was almost today. My daughter was, very sad the whole time she was here. She was just struggling with things in her life. And I just handled it like a champ. And I hugged her goodbye. And I know you can do it. I wasn't acting like Shalene, people. Shalene is usually, oh, I'm so worried. And then she leaves and then I just falling apart because she's falling apart. I'm falling apart. None of that was there. And I truly attribute it to a clear, calm mind. I don't, it's just not me.
That's the mood thing.
Yeah, that's the mood.
Where it helps, that helps our mood. So,
and then I have one more thing to share. Sorry, I always have stories to share, you guys. So I got a new watch. What does it look like? Looks like a smartwatch. It's not. It's a knockoff cheap one on Amazon. It was only $39. It does everything the smartwatch does. And I absolutely love it. So I've only had it for 4 days and it keeps track of my beats per minute, my resting heart rate. Almost my whole adult life has been, I'm really embarrassed to say, 75 to 85. I just have not had a good resting heart rate. I have been averaging 60 to 65. That is a huge difference. And this thing keeps track of my steps, so that's kind of fun. And this thing keeps track of my sleep. So you know how we're supposed to be getting better sleep with Advantage. The first night I wore the watch, it said I had an okay kind of sleep because I was so not used to wearing a watch to bed. I was just kept waking up with this weird thing on my arm. And then the next 3 nights, I've had what it says is a perfect night's sleep with enough deep, enough light, enough REM. And you get this little chart on your app that tells you exactly, you guys know what it is. You guys probably all have this already. I'm just late to the game, but it shows me, let's see, isn't that weird? Now, the very top little mark is I had to get up and go to the bathroom last night. It was the first time all week I had to get up and go to the bathroom. Besides yesterday, all week long, I never even woke up at night. But isn't that cool that it keeps track of every little thing? And then it tells you, you got a perfect night's sleep, sufficient sleep time without waking up at night, not feeling tired when waking up in the morning, and full of energy during the day. That's pretty cool. Anyway, just thought to let you know, I feel like the oils and Advantage is giving me so many benefits. And I would be on a soapbox for the whole hour if I kept going. Anybody else want to share anything that's going on with them? Oil stories, MetaPower. Okay, I talked too much. I need to stop. John, I'm going to introduce you. I'm so excited you're here to teach us tonight because John's a busy man. He is Dr. John. He is a molecular biologist. He does a lot of different things. And I get it right now, John, because I have a son-in-law that's also a molecular biologist. So I'm getting it right these days. John is married to Leanne. We see Leanne on some of our calls sometimes, and they do doTerra together. They're an amazing team. And I love that the way Leanne does the business a lot. John supports and teaches classes. John also has a coaching business. He's been helping people lose weight. I don't know what that is. Hearing a funny noise. Oh my goodness. I am getting a message on my phone, even though my phone's turned off. That is really strange. So John and Leanne have one little gal, Val, and she's 4 years old and she's adorable. And they are powerhouse couple when it comes to all things natural. John is very educated and has a lot of great information to share with us tonight. And I'm super excited to hear it. John, we'll turn time over to you. You need the screen tonight?
Yeah, please.
All right.
Yeah.
You may do it.
Can everybody hear me? Is my sound okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, first off, thanks so much, Shalene. You have a great son-in-law. It was great meeting him at the wedding. So it's always great to talk science with people. So I love talking science. And like Shalene said, Leanne and I both do the business. We do it a little differently. I love athletic stuff. I love like decision making and really like helping people kind of cultivate better decisions. And I love how MetaPower really helps support that, right? So it's just such a great tool to have in your tool belt when you're working with people. I know in the past, we've had therapists on our team that have really just benefited so much from having the oils as a resource to work with their clients. And so as someone who's really focused on like metabolic health and fitness, it's so great to have tools like MetaPower to be able to do that. So real excited. I am a scientist by training and I do think in PowerPoint. So I will be, I do have some slides. Don't be scared that there's going to be science on there because that's
No.
Just
kidding. That's why you're here, John.
That is why I'm here. So I'm here to make it fun. So do I have control yet, Shalene?
Yes, you're good.
Well, let's do this then. Cool. Awesome. Can you guys all see these slides?
Yep, we
Yeah.
got it.
Awesome. Well, I am super excited. Like Shalene said, Leanne and I've been doing oils for a couple years now. And I love that we've had this opportunity to go to convention where doTerra really shares like the kind of the deep, the deep details on all this stuff, right? So some of the stuff I'm gonna be sharing today is going to be coming from slides that they've put up at convention. Some even before they started making it available virtually, I think. So yeah, it's going to be cool. So this is the process going from, the oils being harvested from plants, distilled, and then all the way into these vats of oils that they get shipped to the doTerra corporate offices. So they have distilleries all throughout the world. This one here down in the bottom is in Bulgaria. And they have storage facilities all over the world so that they're able to test and then ship out these products locally, right? So it's such a cool operation, and all we have to do is just put the oils in our cart, right, on the store. So all this stuff happens behind the scenes, and we just get really fantastic oils. So I see a question in the chat. Shalene, if you,
I will monitor. Yep.
Yeah. So awesome. Thanks. So yeah. So before we get started, I always like to ask, just kind of frame it, be thinking about what questions, you have as we're going through. So like, we all have friends out there that are interested in these oils, or that we're working with, or that we just want to talk about them with. So like, who just have someone in mind as we're going through these slides? So who would I want to share this information with? Also, what are you here to learn, right? Like you're here, you're actively engaged in this class. What do you want to get out of this? So I'm just a great science resource. I know a lot of science. I've been doing this for 20 years now. And so I can hopefully be able to work with you and kind of get some answers to those questions. Also, how do you see yourself using these essential oils, right? So how is, like knowing more about the science going to help you be able to understand how you use them? So I like to think of this in the framing of like, different healing modalities, right? So as we come to oils, this isn't the first kind of alternative treatment that we've been exposed to. A lot of us have gone to chiropractic, we've tried different diets before, and they've worked for us. And so I like to kind of associate with that. And then finally, how are you using these oils? We're going to be talking about MetaPower. We're going to be talking about adaptive. We're going to be talking about On Guard. How are you using these oils currently? And then how does knowing more about the science, make you kind of think about that, how you're using them? And then finally, also think about like why you're here, right? Why did you start this healing journey? Was it something that, why did you get interested? What was the first oils that you're interested in? Was it On Guard, adaptive, abode? These are all great questions to get started with. So another kind of big question I always like to think about is, where does medicine come from, right? So we're here to talk about medical research. Medicine is something that's been evolving for thousands of years, right? So we think about it today as things in soft gel form or pill form, but honestly, it started with herbs. There's this great quote from Hippocrates about let food be thy medicine. And it's, I think that ultimately, when people are like, you're going to take these drops and they're going to do what? Like it's, or even stuff like the placebo effect, right? Like, we've kind of take for granted a lot of things. Like the ginger is going to help if you have an upset tummy, right? Or that like chicken noodle soup's going to work if you're sick, right? Like there's a reason for that, right? Like you've lost electrolytes. Chicken noodle soup's going to be great. You got to have broth. Broth is something that's going to be easy on the stomach. There's lots of reasons for these kind of like, this kind of like older wisdom. And, a lot of those herbs that we kind of associate with that kind of like that older wisdom are, we don't have to be limited by like that kind of older access, right? We have the essential oils, we can use the essential oils, and they're a lot easier to store than to have to get, to cart around like bags and bags of plants everywhere, right? And they're more effective, they're more efficient, and they're easier to access, right? Like we You know, doTerra doesn't have to have bushels of ginger, right? Or a peppermint. It can just have these little bottles that sells. So it's fantastic for access. And so another thing I really like to think about is there's lots of different medical research, right? You've probably seen like a news article talking about a study, but there's lots of studies. Studies are happening all the time, right? So, so let me just get the clock up because I will 100% go over time. Yeah, so we have, so a couple of examples of studies might be, so there's kind of two tiers. There's a third tier, but I'm not going to worry about it. So basic research and clinical research. So basic research would be questions like, how do they work? And then like, what is good against what? So so in this case, it's like, okay, how do oils work in the body? Or like, okay, what oil is good against like X disease, right? Or like, so those are kind of like basic research questions. But then we want to get into how it like, you know, like, okay, well, how effective is it, right? And then that kind of gets into this clinical research. We start talking about human clinical trials. And then we start talking about, you hear things like randomized controlled trials. And then, you know, there's all these different ways you can kind of set up one of these clinical trials. So the two big ones that we've seen with doTerra is these randomized controlled trials and qualitative studies. So, and I'll give a couple examples of both. What they don't do is like a cohort study would be something like, you know, like what, you know, like, okay, and like, is green tea good for you? Here's a population that drinks a lot of green tea versus a population that doesn't. You know, that kind of like, that's like a big kind of cohort study. Maybe one day we'll be able to participate in that. People that have used oils for 5 years or more versus people that haven't, you know, and like that, you know, like what are the health outcomes of that, right? So there's a lot of cool science that can be kind of attributed to this stuff. And I'd love to kind of see that in the future. So there's another kind of layer on this, not going backward, and that's the different, another way to kind of break up medical research is to this kind of these, you've probably heard these terms, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, right? So phase 0 is basically you have to hit like a certain threshold of consistency in your product. And that's more of a manufacturing thing. And so you might have heard a couple of years ago that doTerra had medical grade, I think it was lavender.
Lavender.
And so what that basically means is that when doTerra manufactures lavender, I mean, we know it's distilled from all over the world. They're able to manufacture to blend that lavender so that the components are so tightly controlled. So they're able to, I mean, it's incredible that they're able to achieve that level of like control in when you're sourcing it from plants, right? That are grown at different times of the year, all over the world by different people, right? But that's the kind of magic of co-impact sourcing. The second one is this phase 1 is pharmacokinetics. So that's like, okay, I took this pill, how much of that pill is like in my bloodstream? And that's how they're able to figure out serving size. The next one is like safety. So it's like, okay, did you get an upset tummy when you had 1 On Guard Plus, when you had 2 On Guard Plus, when you had 4 On Guard Plus, when you ate the whole bottle of On Guard Plus? You know, at what point did you start having, did the benefits be outweighed by the tummy aches and side effects, right? And then the last one is efficacy, right? So efficacy would be, I mean, those are probably what we're most familiar with. We don't do human challenge trials, but we do want to know, you know, like how much needs to be in your body to be effective. So this is me at doTerra's headquarters, looking at some of the equipment that they use to analyze the oils. It's worth pointing out that there's all of these, before these oils even get to you, they've gone through so many levels of testing. You know, it's just incredible the kind of work that goes in. This isn't research. This is just people in the lab testing stuff, right? So this is consumer testing. And they're testing to make sure that, there's no, I don't know if you heard like some of the things that kind of get attributed to essential oils, these like case studies, where they're like, oh, some boy had like, like elevated estrogen. It must be the lavender. Well, it turns out the lavender, there wasn't actually any essential oils in the lavender product that he was using, or the shower shampoo or whatever. And so like, there's all of this, and so like, there's no oil in that, right? And it was actually some sort of contaminant that was causing those health issues for the kid, which is unfortunate, but it has nothing to do with essential oils, right? People just love essential oils, so the news gets really into that, right? So it's just a media thing. So everything has been so tested before it even gets to us. And that could be a class in and of itself. So I just love this image that I found. And so this is just the kind of all of the different testing that happens, right? So if you follow the little mouse. So when the oil gets produced from Bulgaria, a sample of like the, 100 liters or whatever batch gets sent to a third party, and it gets sent to doTerra. So doTerra tests it, the third party tests it. doTerra sends the bulk shipment to the third party. And then those results go to doTerra, right? And so then once that sample is like been tested, that's when they pay the distillers, right? So that we're paying by quality. And if it doesn't meet the quality, they're not going to pay for it, right? You might wonder where those oils go, probably to competitors, for the ones that don't meet the quality, right? So, but after it's been confirmed that it meets doTerra's quality standards, that's when the order gets paid for. And that's when it gets shipped. And so before we get anything, it's already been tested, and then it gets tested again once that oil actually reaches doTerra's headquarters, right? So they make sure that what you said we were going to get is what we got, and that it is of quality. And so that level of testing and that level of consistency is why we're able to do science, right? So you can look up the whole story on source2u.com. It's fantastic. We love it. And that lets us really be able to go where no other company has gone before. And so because of that, we're going to talk specifically. There's so much science out there on essential oils, thousands and thousands and thousands of publications. But I really wanted to highlight some of the work that doTerra's internal science staff have really done, and how that's been able to shape the products that they've gone live with, right? And that we're able to get. So this is what that kind of basic research, that kind of top tier, right? So these are some great scientists that doTerra's partnered with. And these are some of the very complex papers that they've been able to publish. I'm going to explain one of them that I thought was really cool. And you can see that Dr. David Hill is doTerra's medical director, is listed as one of the co-authors on these papers. doTerra is deeply involved in making sure that these, that they have all the resourcing that they need, and that that they're kind of presenting it in a way that's honest, right? So it's so cool that they're participating in that. So so it's a little fuzzy. It's a slide of a slide. But basically what they did here, and we're about to really start to dig into this. So the science here is called proteomics, right? So you have DNA in cells, you also have protein. So your DNA leads to make the production of protein. So you're able to look at all of the proteins in a cell, and you're able to add essential oils and just see what changes, right? And so we care about, if there's nothing else that you see, we're looking at growth and proliferation. So you can think about like cancer cells. That's like all about cell proliferation, and healthy cell development, metabolism, right? So this is a little different. This is how cells are growing once again, and then immunity, right? So these are some basic pathways. And what they basically found was that, when they had Citrus nobilis is a green mandarin, and they were basically able to show that, the competitors, using these kind of basic research tools, they're able to show that not only does the doTerra essential oils have an effect, but that the competitors, because they are having kind of the opposite effect. And not only are they having the opposite effect as what doTerra's oils are doing, but that that opposite effect is matching up with a synthetic ingredient. So this is kind of another level of testing. In addition to all of those kind of chemistry assays, that doTerra does to kind of confirm that, you know, these oils are what they say they are and what they're supposed to be. But not only that, but we can see that they're working in cells, right? They're working in bodies. And we can kind of see how that, you know, when you buy oils off the shelf from competitors, that you're not going to see those effects. And in fact, they could be the opposite of what you expect that you're going to get, right? So that's, you can kind of look at that at kind of the basic science research level. But then what we really care about is how does it affect people, right? So this is another great study. So this is, I kind of describe this as science behind the scenes. It's not so much basic research as much as it is, I guess you would call it like product development. So this is kind of product development science, right? So research and development that you would think of in like a biotech company or a pharmaceutical company, except it's an oil company, right? And so this is, you know, one of these kind of initial visions of what science looked like at doTerra. They had some plates, they had some bottles of oils, and they're just kind of testing stuff out. And so with On Guard, they basically put dilutions. So if you go back to this one, they're kind of, this is called serial dilution. So you're making it less and less dilute, or sorry, yeah, more diluted, less concentrated. And then at some point, you know, and then you're basically putting these little, they're called these little discs in this solution, soaking up those discs with the oils, and then putting them on a plate that's covered in bacteria. And then you see, okay, does the bacteria grow? And this is where they showed that the On Guard was able to have this, it's called the zone of diffusion, or zone of inhibition, where around these discs that had the On Guard, no bacteria were growing. It showed that the On Guard had an inhibitory effect on the production of the bacteria. So it inhibited bacterial growth. And this is awesome because it shows that, you know, it isn't, you know, we were talking about the placebo effect, you know, and it's clearly not the placebo effect. It's not that you put On Guard on your hands and your hands feel cleaner, although they do, but it's not about how they feel. It's the fact that, nope, they're definitely inhibiting bacterial growth, right? And we can see that. And then it's just a matter of degrees for how much it is inhibiting it. And, you know, I've done the same kind of studies on different antibiotics and antimicrobial agents to do those kind of disc diffusion studies. It's pretty standard for showing that something works as an antibiotic. Now, whether, you know, and so it's a matter of consistency and a matter of time, whether when doTerra, and when, not if, doTerra is going to show that these, you know, like how much On Guard Plus do you need to take before, you know, you're able to like take the On Guard Plus instead of whatever antibiotic, right? Because it's, these are the same kind of studies that you would do kind of at that kind of beginning basic level to like demonstrate efficacy. So it's so cool to see that. And so what doTerra has done is they took this to the next level and they said, okay, well, On Guard's great against microbes. What if we could do it all over again? What oils would we pick out? And what bacteria would we pick out? So what doTerra did was they picked out the 5 most common household bacteria, and they tested a bunch of different oils at different concentrations against those bacteria. And based on what they what they found was they ended up developing the abode line entirely based on this kind of basic research, you know? And so that's why abode not only smells great, but it's really great at cleaning up dish pans, cleaning up bacterial stuff, like gunk on the I don't know what, like the shower, so yeah, it's just a great household cleaner.
It is. I prefer the smell of On Guard than I do abode. So it's frustrating to me. I'm like, we have all these abode products and I want it to smell like On Guard.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like On Guard's fantastic, but they've definitely kind of split that out, right? So that abode is more for like surfaces and On Guard's more for our bodies.
Yeah, I don't know. I use the On Guard cleaner a lot. There's a lot of comments, John, and I would love for you to just take a peek because
Yeah, sure.
Patty's talked about some studies she's done. Becky's asking questions that I don't understand.
Okay, cool. Yeah, herbs, shorter shelf life, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot going on in herbs. I mean, also like, we know that these oils are gonna be stable for years, right? And they're a lot easier to test than like the effectiveness of herbs. Also, like herb preparation. I don't know if you've ever gone to an acupuncturist, they prescribed you bitter tea, but it's hard to make and stomach some of those other concoctions. Yeah. So alcohol, Lysol, bleach, clove oil, peppermint. It's pretty great. I mean, ultimately they're all kind of working on different mechanisms, right? So same thing with like if you're in a hospital with like chlorhexidine or something like that, like they all just kind of have different mechanisms. So I like to view it as like they all have kind of the synergistic relationship, right? And we should be kind of supportive of these other kind of tools. So it really just comes down to what's the right tool for the job. And then an efficacy study on humans would be generalizable. Yeah, I mean, these are just kind of different things, right? So an efficacy study, I mean, the way that they do that is they look at like how much do you need to be, and then they come up with all these tables, right? So like, it all kind of gets averaged together. So it's like 1 pill for kids and 2 pills for adults, right? That's kind of how they do it in like on the pharma side. But there's a table and it kind of looks at like using averages and like efficacy and then like how long it takes. I mean, these studies, pharma companies will literally bring an 18-wheeler full of documents to the FDA when they file. So yeah. So the amount of data that you can generate and that's worth investigating is huge. But ultimately, I mean, where we're at, we just need to know that they work and that they have like some kind of science behind them and like a general protocol, right? So and then that's enough to get started, and then we'll get better over time, right? So kind of moving on. So another really cool study that they've shown is the MetaPower. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, the MetaPower blends. So at convention this year, what they looked at when they were kind of looking at, like, okay, we have Slim and Sassy. I don't know if you remember Slim and Sassy, but Slim and Sassy was the metabolic blend. But now that we have like a clinical research team and some fantastic staff there, they were really interested in, okay, well, if we were going to rebuild Slim and Sassy over again, what would we do? Right? Well, how would we show that it works? And so what you can do is you can look at cell growth, right? So you can grow, these are human cells in a petri dish. You can grow them and they will accumulate over time, they will accumulate fat. And you can measure this by staining with this dye called Nile red. And so you can watch as the cells get fattier and they get thicker. And they get darker in color. And so what they did was they kind of used that as the tool to develop this blend. And so what they started with was you can kind of watch. So there's this kind of dose dependent inhibition. So you can watch as you put more oil in there, these cells are gonna accumulate less fat, right? So they're gonna prevent cell maturation. And this is the first blend that they tried out. And you can see that as they increase the amount of essential oil concentration in these cells, that they are accumulating less fat. Now, they ended up trying 3 blends, and they were able to compare them. And you can see that, that first one that I showed you on the last slide, that's Slim and Sassy. They tried a different formulation, and it was slightly more effective than Slim and Sassy. But when they finally got to MetaPower, that is the most effective, right? So we're orders of magnitude more effective than Slim and Sassy, and better than anything else that they've been able to come up with. So we're seeing more effects, and we're seeing them earlier, right? So it doesn't take, we're using less than we would with Slim and Sassy, and we're seeing even more effects. So that's just really great to know, because I was taking, man, maybe like 10, 15 drops of some SASE a day. I mean, I'm probably still taking that much in MetaPower, but I feel like I'm seeing more of an effect.
Yes.
So another great oil that they did a bunch of studies on is adaptive. So I know we're all real focused on MetaPower here, but adaptive is also great. It's incredibly helpful for its calming effects, its neuroprotective effects, its emotional effects. And so what they did was they wanted to see how if adaptive would help you out when you're stressed, right? And so what they did was they basically created the highest stress environment that they could think of, and which is a test. So they took so this is how they set up the trial. So they basically put these temperature strips to measure the kind of autonomic response. So kind of independent of, you know, how well you were thinking, you know, like how is your body physically responding to stress? Same thing with pulse oximeters. And then gave these exams with questions that are increasing in difficulty. And then the exam was timed in these stressful inducing scientists in lab coats. So they tried to create as much stress as possible. And they were able to show that in the room where they were diffusing adaptive, the test scores were higher and the heart rates were lower, right? That's exactly what you want to see. And then they also added, just to kind of talk a little bit about the qualitative data side, they were able to hand out these surveys, and they were able to get these responses back from people that were using the adaptive that showed that, you know, not only did they have this kind of performance improvement, but that they were feeling more relaxed. Yeah, so convenience. Maybe you can unmute and explain what you mean by the convenience sample.
My experience with many of these studies that they're done on a convenience sample of college students who happen to be in school at a particular semester.
Yeah.
So the studies are short term, they're 10 to 12 weeks. They're done on younger, more healthy people than older adults. And I'm wondering about a study done on older adults, for example, or adults who have things such as Parkinson's or cognitive dysfunction, things like that.
Yeah. I can tell you right now that there are, so I was looking at studies. So doTerra, so I can, as far as we know, doTerra hasn't done any studies on that population specifically. So I think that it's hard to really dig into a lot of the kind of like the details of the studies that doTerra presents at these, because, you know, they don't present sample size all the time. You know, there's a lot of information that they're not showing. This is more product development research rather than like a true like longitudinal study or something like that, right? So the way that, but I mean, doTerra's team just isn't really set up for that right now, right? So what they tend to do is they tend to partner with people that are more set up for that is more their expertise. And so what I can speak to as far as like the Parkinson's, I don't know about adaptive, but I do know that a lot of the ingredients in MetaPower, specifically MetaPower Advantage, have been studied in this context. So there's a lot of interest in the ingredients of MetaPower Advantage, especially NMN and NAD, around its effect on Parkinson's and all these kind of neural issues, neurological stuff. And so I would look at those because there have been studies on that. And one of the things that's nice about having, like for like these oil studies, you have to have these like pure essential oils. And we know that there's like some improvements to having like the doTerra sourced like nutraceuticals, but the most important thing for the like MetaPower Advantage is that it has what it has, right? It has collagen, it has NMN, it has NAD, right? And so you can just look at like those. So you can look at those studies that are out
and lots
there.
of other stuff too.
Yeah, I was going to
John.
say lots of other stuff too.
There's
That's
some
true.
other really, really good and important ingredients in there that there have been lots of studies done on.
Yeah. So yeah, I would look there. But yeah, those populations have been studied in that context. So let's just get through the rest of the slides and then we'll kind of go. So the last study I wanted to mention was MetaPower Assist. And this is one, once again, like you're kind of looking at like these glucose monitors. So continuous glucose monitors, and over time, like you're seeing like the blood sugar stabilize, right? And you're able to see this improvement in that kind of oscillation and response. And this, I think for me, like when I kind of look at this data, what I really care about is, like how am I supposed to use these? Right. And that's why I really hope that they are able to kind of present in the future is kind of more like data-driven usage methods, right? So like protocols and stuff like that. Because when I look at this, I say, okay, I know there's a lot of focus around taking MetaPower Assist with my biggest meal, but I'm seeing that chart smooth out all day long. And so I am very content to just take it once a day, whenever I'm going to remember to.
Yep. That's my hardest one to remember.
Yeah. So me too, because I'm like, is this the biggest meal?
I know.
I don't know. Is it? And then I'm like, oh, did I take it for breakfast? Or, and I'm like, how many pills are in this bottle? So yeah, so when in doubt, I just take it in the morning, and I just, I can see this chart smooth out all day. I'm quite content with that. So, and then, yeah, so.
Is this over the course of a week? Is that what it says? I can't read it very well.
Oh yeah, we don't have an x-axis for this. We just see it smooth out. I think it is
Saturday, February 20th.
Yeah,
What is
20th and then 27th. Interesting.
Oh wow, so it's just a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Nice.
we're seeing. Yeah, so it's a huge improvement. And people are reporting. I think that the most important thing is like how it affects you, right? And so people are seeing, people are backing that up as well. So
Yeah.
Not only are we seeing it kind of backed up in the kind of data that were presented in this kind of general way, but also that we're able to kind of see it kind of backed up in the people that we know.
Yeah, Sarah's mom is diabetic and she is getting amazing help. Right, Sarah? I mean, I think it's even, she said even her monitor woke her up one night. You don't want your blood sugar to go too low, but that's awesome, right?
Yeah, she's been doing awesome on it. And I've even had my doctor, he looked over everything and is very impressed with it. And I've noticed differences just from taking it for 2 days and going to my doctor and had my very first normal blood pressure reading in 5 years. So it works fast, works really good.
It's awesome.
That's so cool. Well, awesome. Well, yeah, well, I will just kind of end on this plug. So like Shalene mentioned, yeah, oh, is that it?
Gotta show Val there at the end. We
gotta
lost
show
her.
Val.
There
Yep.
she is.
Yeah,
Good.
so I love questions. Meta products reduce low-grade systemic I assume that's inflammation.
Inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah, so inflammation, I mean, I think inflammation ultimately, like the like people talk about, I think the kind of MetaPower advantage. There's been a lot of kind of testimonials around the MetaPower advantage that kind of have to do with the kind of inflammation stuff. I always go back to, I mean, if inflammation is your biggest thing, like I would also, there's a lot of other products that are really like targeted at inflammation. So I'd look at the deep blue pills, as well as the turmeric soft gels, the duo caps, as well as LLV, right? So those are also fantastic. Yeah, I know the testimonials, there's so much of the testimonials are around that. So I think that the people are seeing just incredible results. So I think it's going to be kind of foundational for a lot of people, but if people really need to know, and some people are seeing like just incredible results, right? So I think people should just try it for a month and see what they get out of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense from the ingredient list. I mean, I think I did a class on MetaPower already in the ingredients, but the, like what we know about how NAD, NMN, all of those other ingredients, as Lee mentioned, like they're all super helpful. So it's great to kind of have them all in one place. What were you going to say, Sarah?
I was gonna say that the MetaPower system is good, but it's not the like what you're saying, it's not the only thing that you should be using that's going to help with inflammation, and that it's just another tool on top of those other things to help how well it works, I feel like. So I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to replace it and just do this, not do any of the other stuff. And I think it's still important to use the other oils that are there, and they're there for a reason. So I just wanted to agree with that.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I think that it definitely is going to have like a big place in the ecosystem. And I think like LLV and MetaPower are a good place to start for most people.
So I have a question. When someone is on a limited budget and they have a few chronic health issues and they're just looking for something that's going to give them a little bit or the biggest impact for their buck, what would you suggest in the MetaPower system for them to start with? The oil, the assist, or the advantage?
Advantage. I'd probably say advantage. I
The
feel like,
advantage.
yeah, like I would say they should do advantage for like 3 months or something like that.
And I think that might depend on what kind of health problems they have. If it happens to be cardiometabolic, then it might be better for them to take the assist. And Becky, there are a couple of studies that I have looked at from PubMed. One is about the NMN that's in the advantage. And one of these studies says taken orally, NMN is rapidly absorbed and converted to NAD+. In numerous studies, supplementation with NMN has increased NAD+ biosynthesis, suppressed age-related adipose tissue inflammation, enhanced insulin secretion and insulin action, improved mitochondrial function, improved neuronal function in the brain, and more. So that's pretty good. And then the mulberry leaf that's in the assist, preclinical and clinical studies show that mulberry leaves possess various beneficial effects against cardiometabolic risks, including, and there's a lot of big words here, but hyperglycemia, lipids, high lipids, obesity, high blood pressure, it's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. So when you were asking about the inflammation factor, I think that both of those products are really good, and not to mention that the oils are high in limonene. So all of that is going to help with inflammation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as far as like, I guess like science literacy, I mean, I just like to kind of separate out like the kind of model. So like, I guess I didn't really focus this class on that, but I think it would probably be a helpful kind of frame is that, you know, you have studies. So everybody wants to talk about like, okay, this is how beneficial it is. But you can kind of see that like the most beneficial studies are going to be like these kind of bench level studies. Then after that, it's going to be like in an animal model. And then the least beneficial ones are going to be in human models, right? Because, you know, there's, you know, you can just kind of, it comes down to like how concentrated they are, you know, like how much these systems translate to people. So like a 13% improvement at like the bench level might not even get you like go on to the next level in these studies, right? It might just get shut down there. So you can kind of, it's really helpful to kind of like remember that there's these kind of tiers of studies, and it could just kind of recognize like that an improvement in these kind of human clinical trials is huge, right? Because, you know, a lot of them are kind of on an average basis. And then obviously if you're, you know, that can kind of have like a bigger impact if you're, like you mentioned, like Becky mentioned, right? So a lot of these studies are done on just like like college kids,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, you know, and so, but if you are like in a, you know, like a higher BMI cohort or something like that, you might see an even bigger improvement, right? Yeah, so I guess I'll just kind of end on that, is that these studies are a great place to start, and that, you know, ultimately, like, you want to, once you have that kind of like, you know, once it's kind of piqued your curiosity, you know, it's really important to kind of like test it out for yourself.
To see if it works for you, because we all are different. And I would have to say, out of, I think I have 27 people that I know of that are using it right now and trying it, that there's been one or two that are not having a lot of changes. And I think they tend to be older, very older. And I think it takes longer for them to have some, and I'm just saying this sweetly, but because I'm one of those older people too, but people that are even older tend to need to be on it longer to see reaction. And then I've just noticed that some younger people don't maybe feel it as much or need it as much. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say, as much as it worked for it's working for my mom, it took it a while for her to notice anything, even in her blood, her insulin spikes and all that stuff.
Right.
You had to use it for a while.
So I just can't wait to see where this lands us in 2 months and 3 months and 6 months. It'll be really interesting. And then I'm trying to think, when am I actually going to stop MetaPower? When am I going to test and see how long my body, you know, will still feel good and get all of these benefits if I go off? So be a lot of our own studies to do, right, John?
Yeah, I love it. So let me just address Becky's question. So I don't know about oils similar to rapamycin, but that mTOR, so mTOR is one of these kind of like core cellular pathways. And it was one of the 3 that was looked at in that proteomics study that I started with. So Roseman University, you can follow him, David Lee. He's fantastic. He's been to doTerra's convention at least twice to present his findings. So they've done so much cool stuff. They did the proteomics there, and they also have this really cool way of kind of imaging across cell membranes. And so you can watch as like the oils kind of like pass through your skin. So you can see the internal effects. I thought that was, I really wish they could bring that back to convention, but I haven't seen them publish that. But they have these really cool images where they would apply the oils on like the dermis, and you could watch them like pass into the cells. So they do a lot of really cool stuff there in Roseman University in Las Vegas, I think. So yeah, definitely someone to follow if you're interested.
Yep. Great job, John. Thank you for all your time. Yep. Lots of clapping, lots of awesome stuff. Becky's asking for any links to studies that you've mentioned. So if you have a minute, put anything in the chat. That'd be
Put them in
great.
there.
Oh, thank you, Lee. We have a post-convention tour that is going all over the United States. There is one in San Antonio, but there might be one near you. Some of you are far away. So check the doTerra site for post-convention tour. You can check it under events, and it's $10 whole, and you get to go and you would hear a lot of the MetaPower science. And they give you a free oil, I think, when you're there. I don't know. They just always treat us so beautifully. So I know a lot of the teams going to
Citrus Bloom.
Citrus Bloom. That's right. That's what they're giving out. So this Saturday in San Antonio, the following Saturday, I'm going to be in Utah helping with a grandbaby that's hopefully being induced as we speak. So I'll be going to the Utah one while I'm up there. And I just cannot thank you enough for getting on. It just does my heart happy to have a full crowd here to hear John's good words. And though much of it goes over my head, sorry to say, John, I do appreciate it. And thank you so much for getting on. Next Tuesday night, we're going to hear from, I believe it's Sarah's parents. They're going to be talking, Dave and Jolene are going to be talking about hidden gems in our oils. So they're going to pick out some of the oils that we don't often talk about. And that'll be kind of fun to just hear, because some of us have quite a collection and we don't use some of these hidden gems. And so it'll be fun to have a class about that next Tuesday. And thank you for getting on. Keep using your MetaPower and share your stories with me, because I love to hear it. Thanks for getting on. Those that want to stay, we got a short business meeting for the next few minutes and would love to have you stay on.